Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here as always with my good friend, colleague, and co-host Jim Gurule. And Jim was gracious once again to bring some topics to the pregame discussion, and have an interesting kind of comparative analysis today between two concepts. One is self-confidence, and one is self-conviction. And one of the things that was interesting, Jim, about the pregame was that although they're closely related, they're also distinctly different. And I think that what we want to spend some of the time, maybe most of the time today, talking about those distinctions and those similarities and differences. And they both seem to be connected, not necessarily directly, but perhaps it's one's self-conviction can impact one's self-confidence and vice versa. So I can read this definition of the comparison between the two, Jim, but you want to jump in first and frame it up?
Yeah, like we do every week. In the pregame today, the keyword was alignment. It comes up often. We underuse the word, but today's going to be definitely related to alignment. Everything's has to be in alignment. Everything is connected to another. But for those of you not familiar with our Imperfect Men's Club framework, first of all, our tagline we forgot to mention is the imperfection is the perfection. So we're going to have some fun, laugh a little bit at ourselves because as crazy as it is, or as imperfect as things are, that is the perfection. We embrace that every week at the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. But the framework that Mark and I started close to 5 years ago has evolved to these 5 areas of our life, no particular order. And I'll go really fast. But the first one, as a man, is our life's work, typically our profession. That can evolve. That's your career, that's your business, whatever it is. The second one is the relationship that we have with the world, and that's your heritage, your nationality, your spiritual beliefs, your politics, all that. That's a big part of who we become. And then the other one is our relationship with money. That is a relationship, typically abundance or uh, scarcity, and that has a lot to do with our childhood and other things, but that always plays out. And then relationship with others, and we break that into two categories: our relationship with our mother, our daughters, our significant others, wives, girlfriends, whatever it is different than the relationship we have with the men in our lives. And then the relationship with ourselves, and that's our physical health and our mental health and our well-being. So
Mhm.
what do you think today, Mark? I think what we're going to talk about falls in all of them. I often referred to confidence as being probably one of the most important things, not to have too much, but also not to have enough. Because if you don't have confidence, it's hard to take on the world and do things. But this morning when I was preparing, I was thinking about the difference. The word conviction comes up a lot. I think it's underused again, but the word conviction is something you believe in deeply. And that what's the difference? What's the difference between having confidence and having conviction? And it turns out there are some core differences. So that's what inspired today's episode. Also, hard decisions. I'm in the middle of two licensing agreements. Some of these projects I've worked on for decades, if not a lifetime, and I have to make these decisions that I know will have an impact. But the difference between, say, signing a license agreement 25, 30 years ago versus signing one now, keep in mind, typically a patent could be, well, utility patents are 20 years, but in 20 years, I'm not going to be around and I don't really care what's going to happen in 20 years. So you want to have an impact while we're here. So the math is different when you're starting licensing. When I see an agreement, it says 5 years or 3 years or 5 years. It has a very different meaning to me than it did when I was signing a licensing agreement when I was 30 years old. So I think that what comes to difference is what impact do I want to have when I'm still here? So what's my conviction? And do I have the confidence to walk away from the deal? Or do I have the confidence that I could implement the deal or the project or whatever it is? So, and I
Yeah,
thought, yeah,
it was interesting listening to you talk about that. You're wrestling with yourself a little bit about it, and it's clearly the impetus behind where the topic came from. I think the
Of course.
I think the your conviction in my estimation about that was, do you believe these patents to be reputable? Do you believe them to be of service to the world? Do you believe them to be high quality? Do you believe in the notion that if this thing is licensed and it begins to sell, that the people that will buy it, their lives will improve, depending
Mhm.
on the nature of what they're doing? And I think you believe in that very strongly. The
Mhm.
confidence piece is making that phone call, starting that negotiation, signing
Mhm.
that contract, whatever those things might be. That's a different level of kind of faith, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that, but I also think the extent to which you have conviction about the invention itself will serve you. It might not bring you confidence, but it will help you overcome whatever anxiety or fear might be there, which is, I think, what confidence really is. It's not being afraid. It's just being
Mhm.
courageous enough to proceed anyway, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. It's helpful because now sort of because we spoke on Monday, and I always enjoy or appreciate our conversations when I'm having to make a hard decision because I asked for some perspective and you gave me because you're right. It's not just these license agreements. I'm submitting two talks for the it's called the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show. It's not until next February, but it's part of Design and Construction Week. It's 100,000 people there, and I've spoke at this before. So they have these break off sessions, and you have to submit your application. But you're right. They've asked me to submit. Pretty good chance I could get it. No guarantees, but I also have that going on too. So I have to decide what topic do I want to talk about, what's the track, and it's different this time. Like I said, I've done them before, but it's all about what I wanted. Now it's and you help me with this. When you do a presentation or you do even a talk, what they really want to know is your conviction, right? And then your
mhm.
confidence to deliver that message. So I do appreciate your perspective on that. And then in the pregame when we were talking, you were sharing some stuff you're doing with AI. It's just remarkable, especially after I've seen how you've embraced this technology, but also what you've built in the past as far as your businesses, and then now using your knowledge of business, but also this tool of AI. You had
Yeah.
this level of confidence that um, I've never seen before. Because remember, before we used to have to hire people to do these things. Now with AI, it's become like this. Like how do you? Well, it's an assistant, but it's not a human. In some ways, it's way better than a human because it
Well,
knows so
you know
much
what?
more.
Yeah. Well, they don't have personalities. They don't get sick. They don't show up late
Yeah,
for work. Yeah. There's a lot of, we both had employees before, so it's pretty easy to
yeah,
compare and contrast
yeah.
the benefits of it. One of the things that strikes me, because I was telling you before, we have this chart that you've given me, and I won't jump into it quite yet, but
Mhm.
at the top of it is kind of one of the trait differences between self-confidence and self-conviction. And I immediately was struck by how closely related it is to what I've done my whole life, which is talk to people about what they do and who they are, and
Mhm.
how interested people are in volunteering what they do or what they've done or what they can do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Mark, yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but I have to just inject this part. When we created the framework, that was one of the basis of the framework was profession. Remember, that's at one time what we called it. Now we call it your life's work, but profession, and that's what you do. You're the agent for the employee or the applicant, whatever you call it,
Mhm.
for. So you had this very unique insight on the human behavior of what somebody goes through from both sides, from the employer hiring somebody and from somebody making the biggest decision they're ever going to make next to uh, a marriage, a spouse, or a home. Right? This is a huge
It
decision.
is. It is I discovered very quickly that this is in the top five, typically maybe even three or four. You
Yep.
have your spirituality, you have your
Yeah.
relationships, you have your family, you have your house, your home, your job.
Yep.
Yeah, it's right up there. I mean, if you don't believe in God, it goes up a notch as well. But
Yeah.
this idea that people are very interested in talking about what they can do, but they're not nearly as interested in sharing about who they are, right? And
Mhm.
and I always thought I'm much more interested in who you are than I am in what you think you can do or that you've done, because most of what you can do or have done, I can teach someone else how to do that. But in
Mhm.
terms of your conviction and who you are as a human and how you treat other people and what the rules are that you guide your life by, That's way more important to me than anything you could put on your resume. And I think
Yeah.
that's a serious disconnect in the world of hiring and firing and training and onboarding. I really think that if more companies hired for instincts and convictions and values, they'd have a lot more success in the hiring and retention process. But anyway, this is all this, and confidence is something that both of us help people with. We help ourselves with it, and we help other
Mhm.
people. Any kind of coaching that you're going to do of any kind involves some level of discussion about one's confidence, one's level of
Mhm.
self-confidence, how to get that
Mhm.
back, how to rebuild that, how to improve that, how to increase that. That's all part
Mhm.
of, I mean, I don't see how you could coach anybody to a higher level of performance if self-confidence wasn't one of the topics on the table, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I don't think you can talk about self-confidence without at least trickling into self-conviction, because how
Yeah.
confident you are about what? Well, about
Yeah.
what my convictions are, what my values
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, they're very related, but they're very different. That's what we're going to break down. So, yeah, kick off with the first paragraph, and then we'll jump into the framework that I put together for
Yeah,
today's episode.
it draws the distinction. So while people often use them interchangeably, self-confidence and self-conviction operate on entirely different levels of the psychology. The easiest way
Mhm.
to think about it is that self-confidence is about your capabilities, while self-conviction is about your identity. Back
Mhm.
to what we were saying, who you
Yeah,
are
I thought
versus
that
what
was
you
a
can
really
do.
good description of the two to kick it off. So, this will be fun. Yeah, and like I said, we weave in what you're doing now, and even your experiences um, in building your past business, but even somebody looking for a job or somebody hiring somebody. It's
Well, I think
just
the what you've provided among other things is this chart, and it is
mhm.
five areas, and let's call them kind of the traits of
Yep.
self-confidence and self-conviction. The first one is the core focus. And this
Mhm.
goes back to what I had said about the work that I've done, is the self-confidence focus is what I can do. It's an
Mhm.
assessment of skills, competence, likelihood of success based on past performance.
Mhm.
And the self-conviction core focus is who I am, an
Mhm.
unshakable alignment with core values, truths, and internal compass. And one of the things, Jim, I notice in the work I do now with men rebuilding from divorce, it's the same conversation. Someone's in a situation they'd rather not be in, and they want to get into a better situation. So the circumstances are different, but the conversation is quite similar. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Wow.
much
This
more
is
interested. Yeah.
yeah, this is good. This is good stuff because we can talk about some self-reflection, right? Oh, I forgot to mention in our framework of these five areas, we call it the wheel of life or the five wheel of life. In the center is the most important word is self. And then over the last few years, we've developed this library of self hyphens. So today,
Hmm.
again, episode is about self confidence, but the most important one is self awareness. It all starts with self awareness.
Hmm.
So particularly as we grow older in our age or wiser, it's about being self aware of what's going on. So every episode now is inspired by the self hyphen. And
Hmm.
but what's interesting about this core focus, it's very related to what we're both experiencing with. I'll just speak for my day to day, and because I have this technology now, where remember, because I'm dyslexic, or it's actually more dysgraphia. It's very difficult for me to express my thoughts with words, or I should say, with writing or typing. Now, speaking, that comes very natural to me, but my uh, and I knew it all my life, but I knew it even more in recent years about how much it was affecting my confidence to express myself, because I really didn't have the ability to do that like everybody else could. But in recent really months, I have this new level of confidence because I don't have to worry about that anymore. I could just
Hmm.
speak, and the AI now can do this. And in fact, this episode, all these episodes, I use AI to curate my thoughts before
Hmm.
we start to record. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, confidence goes way up. But I always had conviction though for what we're doing every week, but also for things. So there is a difference, right? That you have to have I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg, which one comes first. I'm almost starting to believe it's conviction comes first, because if you have conviction, you'll push through and do the work that gives you the confidence
I
It's
think that what I find, I agree with you, but I also find with the men that I deal with and everybody that's
mhm,
contemplating change that wants more out of
mhm,
life than what they're getting, whoever that might be, is before self-reflection, before maybe it's part of self-awareness, this idea that, okay, well, you want to be aligned with your values, your core values, but what are your core values?
mhm,
And doesn't it make sense to first discuss those, define those, confirm
mhm,
those, deny those, whatever, are we just walking through life at 64 for me, at 60, a couple years less for you? When did those change? When do they change? When do
mhm,
we modify them? Well, I find most people don't talk about them at all. Most
mhm,
people assume they know what their values are.
mhm. That's
And
good.
and
Yeah.
and when you assume that you know what your values are, the chances of you being out of alignment with them, they're pretty high, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's what
chicken before
I
the
don't,
egg kind of
again,
thing.
like you said, do you have the conviction to defend them or even modify them when needed? I totally appreciate what you're saying. There's one thing to have your value system, but do you have the ability to modify because they do need to be changed and updated at times, right? But have the conviction to stay with them. But I think number two will touch on that. So go ahead to number two. Yeah.
So the second trait of both self-confidence and self-conviction they refer to here is the fuel source, the source of energy. And in the self-confidence world, it's external and conditional. It thrives on wins, positive feedback, data, validation from others, and it changes based on environment and circumstance. The
Mhm.
self conviction is more internal, and what they're referring to here is sovereign, which is what we talked about in one of our last
Yeah,
episodes.
we did a whole episode last week
Sovereignty, yeah,
on
self
sovereignty.
sovereignty.
So
So this is self conviction is independent of the room you are in. It doesn't require a track record of success to exist. It requires a standard of integrity. My dad coined the phrase that I'm sure he got it from somebody else, but if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
mm,
Well, what do you stand for? That's what
yeah.
your values are. What do you stand? What's important to you? And
Hmm.
I think that conversation is a very interesting conversation. We don't have to have it now, but it really it's the beginning of my work. It used to be tell me about yourself, and now it's more like tell me who you are. How much do you
Hmm.
how well do you know yourself?
Hmm.
Is a very interesting conversation, and I find most people don't know themselves very well, or we
Hmm.
kid ourselves
Hmm.
sometimes about what we're good at or what we're not good at. And
Yeah.
that's
This one speaks to me something that we also don't talk much about, but it always comes back to self-awareness, and that is our ego, because uh, often a lot of what's driving all of us, it's a human thing, right? Is our ego, how we feel about ourselves or how we feel about others think of us. And um, I don't think that should be framed. The word ego should not be seen as a negative. It should be seen as a part of a human psyche. This is it's very much who we are. But in order to have, let's just say, a healthy ego, you have to be validated. It has to be real. You have to have some small wins or some wins to feel that you feel good about yourself. Because nobody, it's hard to believe somebody that isn't confident in what they're saying. But
the other
when
thing that pops into my head about that concept that you're talking about is spirituality. I think that the people that I know that have given themselves over to God, let's say, that have a belief that God is really the one who's in control of everything and we don't really have control over much, you can get quite a bit of confidence from that position. That posture can bring
interesting.
you a lot of confidence. Not
Mm,
to say that you have to believe in God or don't have to believe in God. That's entirely up to you. But I think when things get really challenging for me, I lean on that pretty aggressively,
mm,
and I'm very grateful
yeah.
to have that available to me. And it's
Mhm.
something that for somebody who might be on the fence about that, maybe it's worthy of investigation, as opposed to
Yeah,
just
yeah.
dismissal.
I'll make a short comment because I think what you're saying is important. Again, you know how I feel. I believe I'm very spiritual, but I don't believe in any particular organized faith or religion. Not as a criticism, just because that's just what I choose to believe. However, I'm always or not surprised any longer when somebody accomplishes something unbelievably remarkable, no matter what it is. if it's the World Cup soccer or the World Cup rugby or the world or the Super Bowl. Why is it most of them, at least probably more than half of them, say the same thing? And what is
Mhm.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
Thank God.
supports your, like you said, forget about whether you believe in that religion or that faith or whatever it is, but clearly they attach to something that empowered them to do amazing things, to accomplish something very, very few humans will ever do. And so it
That
does,
is an
yeah.
interesting observation. And I think faith is a type of confidence. You have
Yeah.
confidence in the existence of God.
Mhm.
And then,
Well, yeah, it's certainly conviction, right? I mean, you're
it's
believing
both.
in something
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
is not,
that would be something, I was thinking about my values as we're talking, and I think that faith is something that you'd be hard pressed to get me to move off of my faith in terms of trying to convince me otherwise.
Mhm,
But also, like, I think part of that faith, just as for instance, as an example, would be the whole right to life versus abortion. I know
mhm.
I don't believe in abortion, and that's an opinion that makes a lot of people really happy and a lot of other people really pissed
Right,
off.
exactly. I have an opposite position on that, but again, we'll say that for another show. Let's move on to we got number three, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the third trait is what happens when the shit hits the fan, when
Mhm,
failure hits and self-confidence
mhm,
gets shaken. You feel, if you fail repeatedly, your confidence naturally takes a hit because your belief in your current capability drops. And
mhm,
then, that's to my point about my values is, that it holds. Failure doesn't diminish your conviction. It means how you did something failed, not why you're doing it. And that's an important
mhm,
distinction, And I
mhm.
think that in my experience, Jim, we've talked about this many times. I don't think you really can understand who someone is until failure hits, until something gets
Mhm.
hard.
Well,
And
we'll go ahead and read on. Like I said, let's see the difference between self-conviction. So,
well, I
um,
just did.
oh, I'm sorry.
I just read the
Okay.
difference, and I'll repeat it
Yeah.
just to hammer it home. But when things get difficult, confidence gets shaken.
Hmm.
When things get difficult, conviction holds, right? It doesn't
I
diminish
see.
your conviction because it's not about it's how you did something may have failed, but not why you're doing it, right?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
same.
I,
That
I see your
remains
point.
the same.
It may get threatened, but it holds. It doesn't. You don't give that up. But I
Well,
also think it's a conscious decision, right?
that's also maybe at the point where if you're
Yeah.
reevaluating your values, maybe that failure does seep in and start to go, maybe I should question the strength of that conviction. Maybe I should reconsider that conviction. The problem I have with people in general is that when they change their position on things without any acknowledgement that circumstances have changed, they just flop, you know. That's not conviction. That's false.
Yeah, yeah, we're changing context a little bit, but again, the focus today is about how we think, as 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 a man or as a person, that doesn't matter, but how we think. But yes, there's no question that I lose a tremendous amount of confidence in others when they change their mind from one conversation to the next in the same day, or they change their conviction because they clearly were not very, they didn't really believe in it. They said it, but then they were easily persuaded by somebody else or another factor to change their position. I found that when that happens, um, if I have a relationship with somebody and that happens, say more than once, probably once, then the way I view that person is never restored to be the same. I think
Yeah,
it
it's
is almost a deal breaker as far as that's it's so obvious to me, and especially if they do it more than one time, where they didn't have conviction. They're dangerous people because you don't know who you're talking with. You don't know what's gonna. You can't rely on whatever is they're saying is to be true or fall through on. So
yeah, I think they're referred to as politicians more often than not.
that's a whole other conversation. No, I think again, this is the difference between somebody that truly has conviction, is willing to die for it, right? They
Yeah, it's
believe
a
in it
big
so
deal.
much.
Yeah.
There's very, and it's not easy to do. This is not easy, but that's is why they accomplish great things. Well, we did a whole episode on this, right? We kill our leaders, be worth being killed, because that's
Well, we
That's
both
what
have
happens.
pretty significant experience with team sports, and I think that's a big deal with regard. I mean, you need to, when you're going out in the field with somebody, you need to know they have your back. You need to know they're going to
Yeah.
be there even when the shit hits the fan. And
Yeah.
if you can get yourself on a team like that, those are the teams that win championships, you know?
Oh, there's no question. But you also have to have some confidence. The scariest games for me, or matches rugby, whatever it was being overconfident.
Hmm.
Those are the ones are the dangerous ones because as an underdog, you don't have overconfidence. As the uh, so-called better team, the most dangerous thing is to be overconfident.
Yeah, well,
And then you
it's one of
find
the
out,
reasons that winning back-to-back championships from one season to the next is so difficult
it
because
is.
you gain
That's
the
right.
confidence in the first win, and oftentimes you take that into the next season
That's
with a
right.
little bit too much confidence, and
No
you
question.
drop your guard. You know,
Yeah.
you get beat by a bad team because you don't show up because you don't think you need to.
Yeah.
We see that all the time.
Yeah.
So the fourth trait of each of these qualities is social dynamics. And I think what's meant by that is that the self-confident person is not really paying too much attention to the people's approval from other people. They confident people enjoy commanding the room and seeing their capability recognized by others, but I don't think they necessarily spend their time seeking out the approval of others.
Mm.
Perhaps, but I've heard people say before, I don't care what anybody else thinks of me. Yeah, I think everyone does. I think everyone does. And I think for me, it comes in moments. There are moments where I feel more of that, and some moments where I'll put up a good fight and say, I don't care. You can tell me whatever you want about
Mhm.
that. I don't agree with you. And I say it confidently. The,
Yeah.
person with self-conviction, they accept what's referred to here as friction
Mm.
and
Yeah.
entirely comfortable standing alone and don't need the crowd to agree. And nor do
Yeah.
they care if the crowd doesn't agree. That's a really
Yeah.
strong position to take, but it's not easy.
Yeah. I like this one actually a lot now that I think about it because you're right. This goes back to the ego, right? Seeking approval. Confident people enjoy commanding. That's fine. They're also seeking to have their egos or to feel good about themselves. That's the confidence. But if you really have conviction, then you actually want friction. You want to be challenged with it. You
Be
want
tested, yeah.
to be tested because one, it's you believe in it, but two, you want yeah, the challenge, the resistance makes you more aware of the issue or makes you more effective. Should not be afraid of it. You should embrace it. That's a big
Yeah, I
difference
mean,
between those two. Yeah.
we say all the time it's not about politics, but everything's about politics. And it's like I think that when you're talking to someone with whom you disagree, and the person that you disagree with doesn't want to have the discussion,
Mhm.
I don't think there's conviction there, right?
Yeah.
I think there's an absence of conviction. If you're willing to discuss things with people with whom you disagree and investigate and listen, those are a lot more fun. Those are two
Yeah.
people that do have
Yeah.
conviction. They just
Yeah.
are
Well,
convicted
let's wrap up with this
in
last one
opposite
before we run
ways.
out of time here. Yeah. So,
Yeah, the last one's energy. So
mhm.
self-confidence is dynamic and performance driven. It pushes you to execute, speak up, and take action in a specific manner.
Mhm.
Self-conviction's a quieter road. It provides the deep stability that keeps you grounded when the world
Mhm.
gets loud and chaotic.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to see, Jim, how people confuse the two of these things because they are,
Yeah.
the whole time we're talking about them, I'm thinking, is that confidence or is that conviction? You know?
Yeah, well, I said I'll go on this. These are pretty good. So, the energy, yeah, like you said, I think the confidence is sometimes there's overconfidence and somebody's pushing out their confidence as, I know it all and agree with me because I'm confident that I know. But when you have conviction, you don't feel like you need to convince anybody. It's the power of calmness, the power of not saying anything, the power of knowing, and then also being selective of uh, who you want to have that conversation with. And there's certain moments or times in life where you realize this person is never ever going to comprehend what I'm saying.
Hmm.
So why would I try to waste my time to convince them of that? And sometimes by by being calm and being quiet, it's a better way of saving your energy, or also a more effective way um, to communicate your conviction for that particular issue. But it's
Yeah, I think if you have conviction for something, you're not as interested in trying to convince other people about your belief system. And I started years ago. I try to be good about it. I'm not trying to win any of these conversations. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. You've said before that, you don't give advice out anymore. You share observations. And I think that's a conviction play
Mhm.
right there. It's
Yeah,
just like, who the hell am I to be giving people advice? Well, but how
yeah,
about how about sharing observations? That's a healthier way to go about it.
yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, just like you said, I in fact, I this last weekend, particularly when I'm speaking with somebody that's in their 20s or 30s. That's what I'll say. I say, hey, they'll ask me a question. I say, hey, I don't give advice anymore. I really don't. I stopped doing that a few years ago. I'll give you a perspective. I'll give you a life lived experience. I'll give you maybe some wisdom, but it may or may not apply to your situation. I think it's very unfair to extrapolate your life in your circumstances to my life when I was your age. So but I do that, like, kind of with a level of calmness. And this is the
Hmm.
word quiet, right? I have whatever I'm going to say next. I obviously have developed a conviction for that, and I feel strongly then in what I believe. But I also know it may or may not apply to you. So be careful what I say, right? There's nothing worse than somebody with too much confidence giving unsolicited advice of how someone else should live their life, and not fully understanding their circumstances. And I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
it's,
I'll close out with this because
yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, most of what I've done professionally is try not to presume
Mhm.
that I know about anybody and to dig into who someone is, because when you're giving advice to someone prematurely, that's extremely presumptuous, as if you
Yeah.
know that they should apply this without knowing anything else about their lives. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
need more context in most
Yeah.
of our conversations.
Well, today was also a different episode because this is going to be one of the first episodes we start to post on YouTube. We've had a YouTube channel. We just never utilized it with the video. So we filmed this today where we'll post our YouTube videos on, or excuse me, our weekly episodes on YouTube. And the fact that we're wearing the same color shirt today, was that planned or what? How did you know to wear a green shirt? And is this
I
like a
think
uniform? We do this. We coordinate this every week for every
I
episode.
know. No,
I
I
don't
think
know.
it's just more like a sign. It's probably a sign that we have been blessed with the ability to produce video just by the
Yeah.
color of our shirts. All right, dude. Well, we'll figure out the logistics of that. That's going to require a little bit of shifting around of responsibilities, but
Yeah.
until next week.
Okay. All right.
See you.